Welcome to The Route to Revenue, two entrepreneurs sharing the path to curbside cash flow. I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. We're both founders of two successful recurring revenue businesses in the home services industry. And we've built our companies from startup to profitable and scalable operations.
This is the show for entrepreneurs serious about building sustainable home service businesses. Whether you're starting out, scaling up, or ready to move beyond trading time for money, we share proven strategies for creating predictable monthly revenue streams.
And while our expertise comes from the bin cleaning industry, the systems and principles we discuss work for any recurring revenue home service. Think lawn care, pest control, pool maintenance, and beyond.
Each episode, we break down real-world strategies for customer acquisition, retention, operational efficiency, and building systems that generate consistent income while you step back from daily operations.
Are you ready to transform your home service businesses from a demanding job into a profitable asset? This is The Route to Revenue.
Welcome to The Route to Revenue. I'm Ben Magee, and I'm here with Mike Walker. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, Ben. How you doing? Hi, everybody.
Great. So today we're actually going to be talking about how to get started. And we were actually offline just discussing this. And you know, Mike and I have our own experience as far as what we've done to start our businesses and how we got started. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but understand that this can work for any recurring revenue business. We aren't special because we're in the can cleaning industry. It's a recurring revenue business. Would you agree with that statement, Mike?
Absolutely. I would more call it the bin cleaning business because my company name is Spiffybin and you are Green Can, But yes, I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
You know, there's times that, you know, you go to a house and there's 7 different providers there, from the lawn guy to the fertilizer, to the maid, to the pool guy, to me, to the roof. I don't even know, like painters, like there's people everywhere all the time. And in a lot of those businesses that I just cited are recurring. I would argue all of them are recurring. They just have a different time period. The painter, if he's at your house, he's going to paint it every 7 years, 5-7 years. The can guy is going to be there every month or 3 months. You know, the pool guy is going to be there every week. Lawn guy is going to be there every week. So all of these businesses have something in common. It's just how much of a frequency that you have. What do you think about that?
Right.
Ben?
And they're all going to use a little different equipment and have a little different requirements, but the basics of the business is all going to be the same.
100%.
So last episode, we talked about kind of our origination stories is what I'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'd like to talk about today is, you know, I'd call it how to get started. But I think what we really need to do, what it really is the mechanics of starting and
Right.
kind of get into a little bit of that nitty gritty. Hey, what happened? How did we move forward? So I guess my question to you, it sounds like maybe the conversation with your father-in-law was probably the first hurdle that you encountered. Would that be correct?
Yeah. I mean, if you call it like an objection handler, maybe perhaps. Yeah. And if you hadn't listened to it, that was just episode 1, but quick backstory. I was talking to my wife and she's like, I'm not sure you should get into this business. Why don't you talk to my father? And we all know when we talk to our father-in-laws, how comforting that can be. And he is a great guy, so it was very comforting. But that was an objection handler. She's like, I don't want to say no to effectively. She didn't want to say no to me, but she knew my father-in-law would. And turns out he thought it was a great idea too, because he saw the vision, he saw the passion, he saw all that kind of thing. So absolutely, I think the other thing that we run into a little bit is, are you starting a business or are you starting a side gig? And I think there's 2 different drastic differences there. You know, I knew when I started, I wanted to start a business. I didn't want to start with, you know, I could start with an IBC tote that I cut out and I could dump the water in their yard and I could do, you know, you hook up to their house for water, but I knew I didn't want to do that. So I decided I was going to go big or go home type of thing. And, you know, I went out and found the best, I thought, I believe still to this day, the best equipment. And I just said, well, we're going to put the house on it. And again, in episode 1, we talked about how we financed or how I financed and we had a home equity and I went out and bought the biggest, baddest piece of equipment that I felt was going to do the best work.
Well, and And what I would say there is, I started with a trailer, and it was still a professional trailer. It was
100%.
still able to be efficient. And that's what I looked at was how can I be as efficient as possible for the lowest cost possible and make sure that this is going to work without putting too much at risk. And
Wow.
as a result, because of the equipment that I chose, I actually gave myself a chance to scale. And at the time, I didn't realize what was happening. But when I look back, I go, you know what? I am so glad that I did. In my case, I knew that I wanted the 2-bin lifter. I didn't know why, but
Yeah.
I knew that I needed to be able to put 2 cans up on that thing at a time. And really, it was kind of common sense. Okay, there's 2 cans at a house. I'm going to not be there as long if I can lift them both at the same time.
Right.
And so I think that the key is to buy the best equipment you can that will fit in your budget, but that doesn't mean that you go blow the entire bank on equipment. What other startup costs did you have when you were getting started?
Yeah, I mean, you've got everything. You got everything from insurance for sure. Where are you going to put the item? I guess as we talk about this process, it looks like I was going big all the way through. So I bought the truck, and then I rented a warehouse from day one. I just recognized that the last time I bought a $150,000 piece of equipment was never. And do I want that sitting outside? And I determined I did not want it sitting outside. I wanted it secured and locked up inside. So I rented a warehouse. Well, what is that? That's $1,250 a month. What is that? 6, 7, 8 grand a year. Not inexpensive, but I knew that, I was going to go big or stay home type of deal. So I had that. I had insurance for the business. I had insurance for the car, or for the truck rather. CRM, customer relationship manager, that equipment. I had to get that started. Now, a lot of these are monthly costs, but I'll be honest with you. I don't know if you've looked at your, credit card statements, but those monthly costs from Netflix to Prime to, Jobber to whatever systems you use, they add up. And I think what you were alluding to a little bit before, was by not blowing the bank on some of these items, and using all of your money, you provide a runway where you can outrun or outlast, even the toughest times. And arguably the first 6 months to 2 years is the toughest time, in any
No doubt
business for
about it.
sure. Right. So
No doubt
nothing
about it. I
profound
mean,
there.
we're in I'm in Denver, so it's a cold weather state, and we got through the summer and it's not like we had a ton of customers going into the winter. I mean, nobody knew about the
Yeah.
service at that point. And
When did you
it was
start,
really an
Med?
education process.
What part of the year did you start?
We actually picked the trailer up in March.
Okay.
And
Arguably the
so
best
we've been working on it. I started working on it in December of 17, and we picked it up in March of 18.
Excellent.
And so we'd gone through the summer, and I felt pretty confident in that, I knew what I was doing. And then, that first snowstorm hit, and it was like, oh, well, there's an eye opener.
Kind of forgot about this.
Wow. Okay. How do I deal with this? How do I keep running during the winter? And how does this work? And, it was just another issue that we just had to solve.
Yeah.
I knew that we needed to operate year round for various reasons. And so, and that's kind of what I think when we talk about an entrepreneurial spirit, it's not that everything's rosy and problems aren't going to come up.
Absolutely
It's what
not.
you do when the problems come up that sets you apart. And I think that that's the difference between you and I and someone who's started a business and not been able to make it is, number one, they probably didn't have the runway that you were talking about. And number two, when these problems come up, because and it seems like they all hit at once every time.
Yeah.
It's, I know for you, it's a truck breakdown and driver, leaves. And I mean, all of us have that same thing, and everything happens at once. It's like the universe is conspiring against you.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Yeah,
and
and that,
it's tough.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Mike.
No, no, we're talking over each other a little bit. I apologize, but yeah, I think absolutely that runway is critical, and then just recognizing where you're going and trying to manage going through all of the different nuances. You know, again, I started it at knowing that I wanted to be a business and not a side hustle. But without the support of my family and my wife, and I've got a wonderful wife, you've got a wonderful wife. I mean, arguably, you got to make sure all of your ducks are in a row, personal and business, or else you're going to run into problems. And no problems
Well,
better or worse than the other. Because if your wife or your husband's always, not barking at you, but you got to be home by 5 o'clock. I'm out doing this, and I'll be honest with you, it happens from time to time. I mean, I am not a hands-off business owner, and neither are you. And,
no.
come Saturday, my wife was calling me and I'm running and she's like, 1 o'clock, I need you home. I'm like, oh, I got 22 stops left. Like, I mean, I am sorry, but I'm just not,
Yeah.
that isn't going to happen right now. And and I think a lot of people are meant to be W-2 payees where they go in and they know that on Friday in 2 weeks, they're going to get paid. And when you are not a W-2 payee and you're an owner and it requires your owner draw to pay you, there may be weeks and months where you're not getting paid and, you're just funneling everything back into the business. How did you handle that in the beginning, Ben?
I was actually fortunate. Lisa had a small business, and we got started, and um, I had some skills to fall back on. So partway into this, as we talked about, and this, Lisa has been battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for quite a while now, and she got sick, and the income stream from her business went away, and it was after I'd quit my job and was doing this business full time, and so I just was scrapping to get everything that I could because we needed some money from the business.
Sure.
And so I took on side jobs. I was doing a lot of pressure washing. I was doing anything and everything that I could to keep money coming in the door.
Right.
And, in a way I was fortunate because Lisa is an entrepreneur herself, and she understands that, hey, you know what? Things may be lean and we may be eating a lot of hamburger helper, without the hamburger.
Dave Ramsey, rice and beans.
Yeah, rice and beans,
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the deal. And I think that there's a mindset of you just do whatever you've got to do. And, you get through it. And as things got better, they got better. And I know that sounds silly, but it's the truth. Is then, one thing led to another. And, but you got to make sure that you're paying that equipment payment and the insurance and, I mean, the cell phone bill. And I don't know about in your area, but we have a toll road that's almost a must in our service area.
Gotcha.
And so, those guys don't wait. They don't accept, hey, you know what? Things are tough right now. I can't pay you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And also allowing yourself to maybe have some profit, save for a rainy day, breakdowns, maintenance. I know you and I talk about it years ago. It was the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Fantastic book. And effectively, it's I don't know, it's a pretty quick, easy read, but it's fantastic. Even better if you listen to it on Audible. On Audible, they, the author, Mike Michalowicz, is the one that also reads it. So that's pretty cool. And he adds things into it, but effectively what he says is the pay yourself first method. Make sure you're in business to make a profit. You're in business to make money. You don't have to be this, what's the word? Oh crap. Martyr. You don't have to be a martyr. Oh, I own the business, so I don't make any money. I'm poor because, I had to pay payroll first and all that kind of stuff. His method is, no, screw that. You're in business to make a profit. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be afraid of it. Go ahead and go get it. And how do you do that? you literally pay yourself first. So you have buckets of money and different things like that.
Right.
How do you do it, Ben? Do you do this a similar method? Do you have different bank accounts, or do you just do it in your chart of accounts? Or
so I used Profit First when I was for quite some time. And you know this, a couple years ago, I decided to bring on a CFO. And right before that, I actually found this book, and I'm going to just hold this up. I don't know if you can see it, but it's called Where Did the Money Go? And there's that one, and then there's also one about pricing. And so I just started reading what Ellen Rohr put out, and it's, she's got a series of books that help with pricing and keeping track of financials. And I had to educate myself on, what's a P&L and what do I learn from it? And what's a balance sheet and what do I learn from it? And as a result, we still use the basics of the Profit First system, but at one point I don't know about you, but I had like 14 bank accounts, and my CFO looked at it and he said, I realize that this helps you keep it straight, but it's going to be a nightmare for me in my office.
I still do. I still have them.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know exactly what's going on with your business, which is really helpful. And yes, if I was starting again, I would start with the Profit First system from day one. And I would actually do the homework to be able to price my product perfectly, my service perfectly, or at least get in the ballpark and be able to dial it in later. And know that, at first I was like, oh, I've got to be the cheapest guy in town. And today I know that I want to be the most expensive guy in town, and I want to provide value for that price.
Because it makes your business sustainable, right?
Exactly.
Ultimately, there's this thing where you can race to the bottom. I'm going to be the cheapest in town. Well, I always talked about it in the beginning. And, do you want to be the Neiman Marcus or do you want to be the Walmart? They're both tremendously successful businesses, and they both have different processes and they both have different systems, and they're both uber successful. They just sell different numbers of products. One will sell millions upon millions of rolls of toilet paper, and Neiman Marcus will sell 2 submarines, or whatever. And, it's crazy, right? I don't know if they still sell submarines after the tragedy a year ago or so, but they all have their places. And I've always wanted to kind of be the Neiman Marcus. In this business, especially when you're running equipment, or in any business, lawn mowing or whatever, if you're doing 250 lawns at $10 a month, well, you only have to do 125 at $20 a month, and you have the same revenue, and arguably a lot less, not even arguably, a lot less headaches, a lot less maintenance quests. Yeah. And then heck, what if you went to $40 a lawn? You only have to do 35 or 50 or something, but I don't know the numbers perfectly, but
here's the other side to that is I find that when I was trying to be the bargain basement guy, I had a lot more issues with customers because everybody was looking for a deal. And so this wasn't quite right and that wasn't quite right. Whereas now that we're the most expensive in town, my guys take the time, they do it right. And I get very rare complaints now. So the other thing that I thought we'd kind of talk about is one of the things that I've always kind of said, and I know that, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I thought we'd kind of pull this out and make it obvious. One of the things that I've always said when people go, oh, how do you get started? And I've always said, just start. You got to take a step. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that anymore. I think that you've got to do some research, and at a certain point, once you've proven to yourself that there's a way through, then you've got to start. But to just jump in there and go, oh, let me do this without knowing, how much runway do I have and what equipment am I going to start with and that sort of thing. I think that I watch a lot of guys, especially in our business, they start and they don't have all those facts yet. And next thing you know, their equipment's up for sale pretty cheap. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree, and I had heard that saying, and I didn't necessarily subscribe to it. Certainly not when, when you've got as much as I had relying on it. So I, I was not going to just go with, I mean, to be frank, I had researched this business 6, 7 months before I even mentioned it to my wife. Like, that's kind of crazy. But, this was my hobby, my, if you will, hobby, where I was researching online and doing this and looking at videos. And I mean, I should probably go back. I had about 50 lines on a spreadsheet with the can cleaners or bin cleaners that I could find at the time, what they were charging, where they were. If I could find the number of trucks, I'd go to their Instagram feed, and some of them, I'm thinking, Kathy Hind and at Austin Bin Cleaners. At that time, she had started almost exactly 1 year before me. And so I had a little history. I was following her and her husband. And they at the time had one truck. And then when I got around, and this was in December 17, November, December. And then when I reached out to her in June or something, they were getting their second truck. And I'm like, well, crap, 6 months in, that's pretty good, right? And of course, everybody comes from different methods, right? I mean, I don't, she had other businesses and stuff. Her and her husband had different businesses before, but nevertheless, it was still promising that she's already investing in, or they're already investing in a second truck. So I think, that was critical to me. And I had done 6 months, and then I mentioned it to her, and I had to get past that hurdle, and then, all the other hurdles that come along with it. But I think you're absolutely right. I think it's irresponsible, if you will, unless you're a single guy and you have, 80 grand or 100 grand in the bank that you can just live off of. But it's a little irresponsible to just say, I'm going to be my own boss, which sounds really great, right, Ben? I mean, it sounds great. I'm my own boss. Well, shit, I'm going to be off. I'm going to be off, 3 days a week. I'm going to go play golf every Tuesday and Thursday. And, I don't remember the last time I played golf. I've got other hobbies I do, but they don't take as much time as golf. And that's probably why they're still a hobby of mine. But yeah, I agree. I agree. I would be in the same boat as you. Is you can never have, you can't have probably too much, right? There's analysis paralysis, right? But
yep.
But I think there's a lot of space between take the first step and analysis by paralysis, or paralysis by analysis, whatever it is. So,
well, I think in that, doing the research, you were started. Okay. And you were figuring it out, and you were working,
at limited cost. The term working. If it wasn't going to get off the ground, I wasn't in for anything other than time.
Right. But you were, at that point, you were doing what they call working on your business. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you turned and you started working in your business, and now you're getting back to working on your business again. 100%. You and I have had those discussions. Mm-hmm. And I think that, unless you're someone, I mean, there's guys that started this business that had other businesses and either exited or still have them. And, they have the money to be able to support. They have a super long runway, and it's like, hey, It doesn't matter how long it takes. I know it's going to work. And so I'm just going to keep going. Mm-hmm. Unless you're in a financial position to be able to do that, I think that you need to start by working on your business and then move into it, and then work your way to where that you're working on it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit about the equipment and what we should start with and why, and there's many different ways to do that. What other things did you do to get started? Did you start off as a full legit business, the insurances and all that, or did you kind of ease into it? What are some of the pitfalls that you can run into if you do it, one way or over another?
So for me, that was one thing that I knew that I needed to do. I've had enough other businesses that I think, you've got to be legit. You've got to set up the corporate structure, whether that's an LLC or, a flow-through entity of some sort, or even if you're a sole proprietor. I think you've got to set that up. You've got to do that background properly, and maybe even get help with that. The other thing that I'd say is, insurance. You can't be out there doing things and taking chances, because especially when you're new, you can have a mishap pretty easily. And if you do, it could be the end of your business and worse.
Yeah.
If you get out there and damage someone's property or damage someone and don't have insurance, you're screwed.
You're on the hook.
Yeah, you're on the hook. And so, I think that goes to kind of the same thing that you were talking about. I think that there has to be some accountability and some responsibility. And that's just part of being a business owner.
Yeah. I tend to, in this last 7 years, have a bunch of stories. And again, probably another story I never told you, Ben. But while I say I did a lot of homework ahead of time, I did. But I also didn't necessarily do everything in the right steps. So I think back to when I bought the truck. It was July. I meet with my father-in-law. September. I hadn't even talked to the seller of the equipment at that point because I didn't want to be sold. I didn't want this, whatever the salesperson to sell me on this business before I had done all my checkings, right? So I'd called again 3 or 4 people across the country, did 50 websites, looked at all these different things. I even had 2 separate accounts set up on CRMs where I would be like, pretend I put all my friends in in their addresses. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to route here, what does that look like? What does this look like? I was doing everything. But what I didn't do, Ben, was set up that LLC. And so, initially, again, it's a risk, right? And at the time I was 47, 48, 6, 5. And, so we have some assets. The whole reason I can get the home equity loan is because we have equity in our house. So, I mean, there's some assets there, right? And so, probably a bad move, but I ended up buying the truck as Mike Walker. And which is, not inherently a problem if I don't get in that accident that you just talked about. And the good part of the story is it did not end in an accident. The bad part of the story was when I did set up the LLC. So I get the truck in December, just before the Christmas parade. And I get the truck in December and I register it and do all that stuff and get the tag. And we're operating in January. And then around February 6th or something, I'm like, I got to get this LLC done. What am I waiting on? So of course I start the LLC, I get it all done. And a couple, 3 weeks later, I've got the LLC. I got the paper from the state. With a seal. I don't know. You just have a foil seal. Man, this thing looked great. Yeah. I was like, man, this is fantastic. Yeah. I'm a full-fledged business, and everything was all hunky dory. And I go back to the tag office and say, hey, I just want to move this business. I want to move this truck from Mike Walker to Spiffybin. And they say, no problem. You'll just have to pay the taxes on it again. Or the tag fee, which is like, I don't know, 7%. So 7 times 100 is like $8,000. And I was like, I'm sorry. I think, you clearly must have misunderstood. I already did that back in December when I got the truck. They go, actually, I didn't misunderstand. You are transferring it from an individual to a quote unquote another individual. And, sometimes you get, I'm pretty easy-go-lucky and I don't get too nervous about things, but I immediately wanted to throw up because I was like, I don't want to spend $8,000 on just to get a tag. This is dumb. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll check back with you. And I hang up and I call someone else. Sure enough, same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I finally go through and I'm like, listen, I already did that. You're not understanding. And she goes, no, I'm understanding. The state of Georgia understands that it's a transfer and blah, 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 blah. They said, but in July, we're changing the rules. July 1st. So in July 1st, as long as you're 100% owned by Mike Walker and going to a business that's owned solely by Mike Walker, which it was, we were good. So I didn't have to pay any tax. So, but I'll tell you, I never drove more carefully in those next 4 months because I had 6 months of basically exposure. And like you alluded to, that exposure could have taken my house, could have taken my vehicles, could have taken, the last 50 years, hopefully, of my life, or whatever, at least financially. Yeah. So yeah, it's making sure that you're putting your ducks in the row and following the process. And there's a lot of different tools online, what you need to set up and when. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate it. And do you have anything else to add?
No, I thank you. I know we're probably just touching on the surface of this. And again, this is more of a discussion or a talk or whatever, amongst friends that, of at least get your juices going. I think that's our intention here is to, we're not going to answer every question. There's other places for that do it a whole lot better than we do it, as evidenced by a lot of my stories and Ben's stories for that matter.
Yeah,
so
a lot of our mistakes.
Absolutely. So, but I appreciate you. And thank you so much for another great episode, Ben.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you later.
Well, Ben, that's a wrap on another episode of The Route to Revenue. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would hit like, subscribe, and leave us old guys a comment about what we did well. And if we did anything wrong, can it and keep it to yourself.
If today's strategy sparked some ideas for your business, don't keep them to yourself. Share this episode with a fellow entrepreneur who could benefit from these insights.
Remember, building a recurring revenue business, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Take one actionable step from today's discussion and implement it in your business this week.
Want to connect with us between episodes? Find us on Facebook or at our website. We'd love to hear how you're applying these concepts in your own home service business.
And until next time, keep building those recurring revenue streams and stay on the route to revenue.
The route to revenue.
Nice, Ben.